Let's take a look at how the markets performed this week. We begin with how the European markets performed as at Friday, the 21st of April, where the market almost had a positive clean sweep. The European Stock 600 closed at all-share index of 469, up by 0.34%. London FTSE closed on an all-share index of 7,914.1, and it was up by 0.15%. The markets in Germany also saw the DAX close at 15,881.6, also up by 0.54%, with the CAC 40 in Paris ended the week at 7,577, gaining at 0.51%. And finally, the IBEX 35 closed at 0.37% lower, with an all-share index of 9,415.6, being the only market closing in the negative. To the Nigerian stock markets now. At the end of Thursday's trading session, a total of 600,778,397 shares in 4,309 deals were traded, corresponding to a market value of 5.05 billion naira. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is 27.96 trillion naira. And finally, let's take a look at the Wall Street as of 21st of April. Now for some top business stories that made headlines this week. Multinational pharmaceutical firm Merck will buy Prometheus Biosciences for about $10.8 billion in a bid to bolster its research pipeline and strengthen its portfolio of autoimmune drugs. The agreement to buy the biotech company, one of the largest pharmaceutical deals in recent history, comes as Merck's blockbuster cancer drug, Keytruda, faces a looming patent cliff. A Merck unit will acquire all outstanding shares of Prometheus at $200 each in cash, according to terms of the deal announced on Sunday. Now to the European Union, where it had been indicated that a 43 billion euro plan to boost its semiconductor industry was likely to see the green light from EU countries and lawmakers on Monday. The European Commission announced the CHIPS Act last year in a bid to cut EU reliance on US and Asian semiconductors following global supply chain problems that hurt European businesses from car makers to manufacturers. The proposed legislation, which aims to double the bloc's share of global chip output to 20% over the next decade, comes after the United States announced its Chips for America Act to compete with Chinese technology. UK inflation, which gauges the rate of price increase, decreased from 10.4% in February to 10.1% in the year to March. It was widely anticipated that it will drop below 10%, but despite climbing at their quickest rate in 45 years, food prices remain stubbornly high. The rate at which the prices are rising is slowing down, not necessarily that prices are declining. Elon Musk had indicated he was willing to sacrifice Tesla's profits in the short term with the aim of making more revenue later when the company's cars are fully autonomous and can earn other fees by operating as robotaxis. But Tesla chief executive's justification for why shareholders should still make lower profits came as the US electric car maker reported price cuts this year. It has driven its profits margin in the first quarter below already reduced forecasts. Now to the Middle East, where Saudi Arabia has transferred a near $18 billion stake in national oil group Saudi Aramco to its sovereign wealth fund, as the kingdom looks to give more firepower to the task of overhauling its economy. The transfer of 4% stake to Sanabil, an investment arm of the Sovereign Public Investment Fund, comes more than a year after the state first transferred a chunk of Aramco to the PIF, which in effect controls 8% of the world's largest oil producer. China's GDP grew by 4.5% in the first quarter, marking the highest growth since the first quarter of last year, when China's economy grew by 4.8%. This was also better than the 4% expected by analysts. Fu Lingui, spokesman of the National Bureau of Statistics, disclosed this at a press conference in Beijing. Now, in contrast, Nigeria's headline inflation rate rose to 22.04% in March 2023, compared to February 2023 headline inflation rate, which was at 21.91%. Looking at the trend, the March 23 inflation rate showed an increase of 0.13% points when compared to February 2023 headline inflation rates. Now, still in Nigeria, Access Holdings PLC, the parent company of Access Bank, has set a new achievement in the banking industry. According to its financial statement released on Wednesday, April 19, the financial company gross earnings increased from 1.38 trillion naira in 2022 from 971.8 billion naira recorded the previous year. This is the first time a financial institution in Nigeria will cross the 1 trillion naira earnings in a single year. Now to South Africa, where the inability of its main power producer, Eskom Holdings, to meet demand is not only hurting the continent's most industrialized economy, but affecting manufacturers in Mauritius. Arif Kurimji, the outgoing chairman of the Mauritius Export Association, says that chronic power shortages have reduced demand for Mauritian manufactured goods by South African retailers, the main buyer of products from Mauritius. Zimbabwe expects to harvest 2.3 million tons of a staple maize grain this year, a 58% jump from the previous season driven by favorable rains. With a population of around 16 million people, the country has struggled to feed itself since former President Robert Mugabe led a seizure of farms at the start of the millennium. Zimbabwe has also endured frequent droughts over the last few years as a result of climate change. The country expects to harvest 280,996 tons of drought-resistant grains, such as sorghum and millet, a 45% increase on the previous season, as the country seeks to limit the impact of climate change on household food security. Now, Netflix shares initially fell in late trading on Tuesday after the streaming video service forecast a disappointing outlook for the second quarter. For the quarter, Netflix posted a revenue of $8.17 billion, up 3.7%, with profits of $2.88 a share. The company had projected $8.2 billion in revenue and earnings of $2.82 a share. Netflix also added 1.75 million net new subscribers in the new quarter, which is about 500,000 less than the analysts had projected. In Kenya, the state will raise the threshold for telecoms firms to be declared dominant to more than half of the gross turnover of the entire market, strengthening its focus on big tech companies. A government-backed bill has pushed the limit for dominance from 25% of the relevant gross market, fixing it at par with that set by the Competition Authority of Kenya. The proposed law puts heavy operational obligations on an operator who has been clearly dominant and imposes punitive penalties for abuse of dominance. Analysts reckon the 25% threshold had captured many operators, defeating the purpose of the law, which is to focus on dominant players. Now, company culture is increasingly important to employees and can be a deciding factor for those considering quitting or choosing a new job. A survey from LinkedIn found that the vast majority, 87% of Gen Z professionals, will be prepared to quit their jobs to work elsewhere if the values of the new company were not closely aligned. Millennials were found to feel similarly, according to the Jobs and Networking platform. When taking both groups into account, almost 9 in 10 professionals would do so, but the figure falls to 7 in 10 for Gen X professionals. Chile's President Gabriel Boric has declared that he will nationalize the country's lithium industry, the world's second largest producer of the metal essential in electric vehicle batteries, to boost its economy and protect its environment. The shock move in the countries with the world's largest lithium reserves would in time transfer control of Chile's vast lithium operations from industry giants to a separate state-owned company. In Morocco, consumer price index in March rose by 8.2% from a year earlier on a surge in food prices. Prices rose by 16.1% from a year earlier, while non-food inflation increased by 3%. On a month-on-month basis, the index rose by 0.1%. Now, core CPI, which excludes goods subject to price volatility, increased 8.1% year-on-year and 0.1% month-on-month.